dictatorship party.
We have to leave it there, Ralph. We want to thank you so much for being with us, legendary consumer advocate, and Mark Green, political organizer and activist. I'm Amy Goodman. Stay safe.
The viewpoints expressed in this program are the opinions of the people expressing them and are not necessarily those of Fresh Air Incorporated, its staff, or its board of directors.
I'm Al McFarlane. Welcome to The Conversation with Al McFarlane. Today is Tuesday, October 25th, 2022. I'm glad to be here and glad to have you along. It's always wonderful to follow Amy Goodman, her energy, her interviews are high charged, important, timely, and we simply have the good fortune of riding that energy into this program every Tuesday. I want to remind you all that we're still in our pledge mode here at KFAI. My colleague and friend and partner for this is Miguel. Miguel, how you doing, man?
Hey, I'm doing wonderfully. How are you doing this afternoon, Al?
I'm doing well. So let's tell people what they need to do, what we want them to do to support this program and to support our station, KFAI.
Yes, if you enjoy the conversation with Al McFarlane every week following Democracy Now!, and of course, the conversation is one part of KFAI's community radio over here on the 90.3 FM dial or streaming online at kfai.org. If you love, this particular thing or all particular things about KFAI, you can give us a call, 612-375-9030. We got our production manager in the pledge room, Mason Butler, there to answer your phone call, ready to hear how much you love the conversation and how much you love KFAI. Or you can also go online at kfai.org and you can drop your donation there. We just started the second week of our pledge drive. So as you can imagine, a week ago, or since this past week, we have raised nearly $28,000.
Awesome.
For the station. And, we're building momentum. And so really thank you if you have already given. And if you haven't already, it's never too late to join the party.
What kind of goal do we have for this 1 hour, and what's our target? I want people to know it and make it happen. We
believe in the rule of attraction,
Mm-hmm.
and so our goal is $90,300, and so that's a pretty big goal.
Okay.
Considering our past drives, but we could definitely use we could use a lot. Even though, we are in pretty good, we're in good financial ground as compared to previous years, but definitely this goal, this amount will help move us along and help us plan for the future and expand our capacity as a community radio station.
Miguel Vargas, thank you, man. Hang out with me and we'll keep asking people to support this program. Help us raise $1,000 this hour. Do your part. Call the number 612-375-9030 or go online. People are standing by to help you help our community by supporting this program, this station, KFAI. Let's get into today's program. I want to begin with the conversation with Senator, the Senator for Tina Smith for Minneapolis and for Minnesota, one of our two. Tina, good afternoon. Good to see you again. Welcome back to the conversation.
Well, thank you, Al. It is great to be with you. I'm glad to know you're doing well. And I'm also doing well, though I think I've been out talking to a lot of voters and volunteers over the last week. So my voice is not what it could be, but my heart is still strong.
Well, I know that you are indomitable and you always give it all you got. So that's what I think people will expect from you and what you always deliver. So thank you for being here. I wanted to have you, given that we're in the middle of an intense political, situation in the country and in our community, to talk about reproductive rights and the impact of the recent decisions, court decisions on the Black community. And I want you to also, in the few minutes we have together, to talk about the Inflation Reduction Act, how that supports the Black community and also advances environmental justice. Those two things to start with. So,
great. Well, we'll start by talking about reproductive freedom. I would say most American values that every human being should have control over their own bodies is fundamental. And the recent Supreme Court decision, the Dobbs decision, which rolled back the protections of Roe versus Wade, felt like a gut punch to so many people. Rolling back, the first time that I can remember that women's rights have gone backwards in my lifetime. Now, of course, this affects all people. It affects all women, but I am deeply aware of what strong leadership Black women have provided in the fight for reproductive justice and reproductive freedom and women's rights. And so this decision, the Supreme Court decision, which puts the decision for reproductive freedom back at the state level, is deeply damaging to not only to people's freedom, but deeply, deeply damaging to their health, because abortion care is health care. And what this does is it puts politicians in the position of telling people and their physicians, their doctors, their providers, what kind of health care they can get, which is very dangerous for people's health. So, of course, here in Minnesota, we are blessed because we have the freedom, reproductive freedom is protected by the Minnesota Constitution. But that could change, because what we have to know is that we have a governor who will be appointing to the Minnesota Supreme Court people who will protect that freedom. And we have an attorney general who will stand up for and protect people's rights, whether they are Minnesotans or whether they are people from other states who come to our state seeking the health care that they need. I'm glad that our current governor, Tim Walz, and our current attorney general, Keith Ellison, have been very clear about where they stand on this issue too.
Let's talk about health, mental health access, for example, is a hot topic right now. And you might include in that discussion things like prescription drug provisions in the Inflation Reduction Act, and in general, talk about the impact of the Inflation Reduction Act on the Black community.
Well, the Inflation Reduction Act takes really significant steps to lower costs for Minnesotans and Americans, all people. It will have a significant impact on the Black community in Minnesota. Let me just describe a couple of the ways how that will happen. First, on the side of healthcare and lowering healthcare costs, for the first time in the Inflation Reduction Act, we will be allowing Medicare to negotiate directly with the big drug companies to lower prices. Americans pay sometimes 3 or 4 times more than anybody else in the industrialized world for our drugs. Big drug companies charge us more. This has this disproportionate impact on Black and Brown communities because of the high incidence of chronic illness that Black and Brown folks experience: diabetes, heart disease, high blood pressure. So that ability to have lower prescription drug costs will be very important. This will affect people who get their health insurance through Medicare. It will put an annual cap of $2,000 a year on prescription drug costs. It will say that folks that get their health insurance through Medicare will never pay more than $35 a month for insulin. Many people are paying thousands of dollars for that. Now, my next step will be to continue to expand these lower prices beyond folks that get their health insurance from Medicare into folks, Medicaid and private insurance. But it's a big step in the right direction and will make a meaningful difference for communities in Minnesota. So that's one way that the Inflation Reduction Act will have a big impact. But I want to talk about also the energy parts of the Inflation Reduction Act. Al, if we have a minute to talk about
please.
That. Because what we passed in the Inflation Reduction Act is the single most dramatic action to address the climate crisis that we have ever taken in our country. And it will help to lower energy costs for communities. And it will bring significant resources to bear in Black and Brown communities that, as we know, have disproportionately experience the harm caused by fossil fuel pollution. So that's a lot, but let me just talk about what that will mean. Significant rebates and tax advantages to people at point of purchase to improve their homes, energy resilience, energy efficiency, to replace inefficient appliances with more efficient electric hot water heaters and so forth. Expected to save families about $1,000 a year in their energy costs, which is really significant. And then I'm so excited about this because I worked so hard on this, and to get it passed was a huge accomplishment for all of us. Resources going directly to communities that have been hurt by fossil fuel pollution for the kinds of things that Ms. Staples is doing in North Minneapolis to build community solar gardens, kinds of things that we want to do in the Rondo neighborhood to reconnect Rondo after being ripped apart by the Freeway 94. Those billions of dollars that will go to communities of color to help address those harms.
That's great news. So let's talk before you leave, Senator, about some of the national issues. I'm just interested in your take on the consequences. What's at stake nationwide? How does Minnesota play in? How does Wisconsin play in? What are some of the key races around the country that you're watching that we should all be paying attention to and measuring what we do in Minnesota, because it all adds up to a significant consequence one way or the other for the nation. What are you watching both in Minnesota and in our neighboring states and around the country?
Well,
let me bring in my writing partner, Brenda Lyle-Gray, in as well.
Hi, Brenda.
Hi, Senator. Good seeing you.
It's wonderful to see you, Brenda. And I feel blessed to be together with both of you because I know you've been friends since you were children.
5 years old. Yeah. So it's been
kindergarten
great.
Classmates in Kansas City. So we're writing together now. But
And
Senator,
enjoyed writing about you, Senator. Keep up the good work.
I will. Thank you. I will. Well, so Al, I have been I am optimistic about these elections because I believe that people are going to get out and vote and make their values heard, their voices heard. Today is the 20th anniversary of the loss of Paul Wellstone. And I'm wearing a green piece of yarn to remind me of Paul. I sit in his seat. He believed so strongly in the power of community leaders to make progress in this country. And that is why this election is so important. And I've been working so hard. That's why I have no voice anymore. I want to just think about it. In Minnesota, we have so many people on the Republican side running who were literally either flat out election deniers. They don't, they don't believe that, they believe that Donald Trump is actually should still be president, that he won the election, or they can't comment. And that gives you an idea of what is at stake in terms of our democracy and having this truly be a country that is ruled by the people and by the rule of law. And,
Senator, that's really scary to me, to feel that there are so many, even here in Minnesota, for all of its progressive, and liberal leanings and reputation, there are numbers of people and significant numbers of people who would want to burn and destroy the whole thing for their version of control and of power. Yes. And that speaks directly to continuing the disadvantage to Black people and new Americans, of women and others. So how do you explain that, number one, and what do we do about it?
Well, you're absolutely right. There is a minority, but a powerful minority backed by big money that is seeking to wrestle power away from the people. I don't know any other way of putting it. And as you know, we have a history in this country that we have to see and understand that has taken away the power of people to determine their own futures and their own lives. we were talking about reproductive freedom, but we're really talking about all freedom here.
Mhm.
So, I feel very grateful that in Minnesota we have some of the best election laws anywhere. We make it easy for eligible citizens to vote. There's more that we could do, but we make it easy to vote. And I'm optimistic that people will make their voices heard, but the stakes could not be higher. I mean, Governor Walz is running against a man who says that COVID is kind of a farce and that vaccines don't work. And Keith Ellison is running against a man who criticizes him. Here's Keith, the individual the leader who prosecuted the murder of George Floyd. And this man who's running against Keith has never stepped into the courtroom to try a case himself. And Steve Simon, our Secretary of State, is running against a full-on election denier. So please make sure that all of our voices are heard this election.
Listen, you've got to leave. I thank you so much for being here. You're welcome here anytime. Keep up the good work. And, let's keep our fingers crossed, but our feet marching to the polls. That's the name of the game. You got to do the work.
That's exactly right. And bring the fierce optimism and joy that we should all feel as we tend to our precious democracy every day. Awesome.
I'm Al McFarlane. This is The Conversation with Al McFarlane. Let me get the station back in. If Miguel is still there. Miguel, thank you for being my pledge partner today. What a great interview with the senator. And that's what we do all the time. We've got more like that coming up. I want to take a minute, though, to invite those who enjoyed that interview and ones like it to support this work, this program, and our station. Miguel, let's make the invitation.
Yeah, there's no other dialogue like the kind of dialogue that you're hearing on The Conversation with Al McFarlane. And we are very grateful for Al to share this conversation with KFAI and with our audience and our listeners. And I hope everything comes full circle with our listeners connecting with Al McFarlane Media. So if you feel connected to both Al and KFAI, give us a call, 612-375-9030, or you can give online at kfai.org. I believe last week was our first day of the fall member drive, and we were able to raise nearly $500 just in the 1 o'clock hour during the conversation. And so I heard you said that, hey, let's go for 1,000 this hour.
This time. Yeah, that's right. If you're listening and you're thinking about it, you know what to do. Pick up the phone, dial the number, and or go to your computer and click on to kfai.org. The number 612-375-9030. Our colleagues are standing by waiting to take your pledge, your contribution, and we thank you in advance for your listening, your support. The beauty of this for me, Miguel, is that we are operating and using the technology to connect people not only here in Twin Cities, but around the world. And the real mission for me personally is to have the newspaper as one of the platforms to extend this engagement. Wonderful interviews with my guests. They end up, with Brenda's help, being stories in the newspaper. We share this conversations experience out to the Black Press of America at Black Press USA YouTube and Black Press USA Facebook. We're sharing this in the digital world at the Insight News LinkedIn page, our Twitter page, and our Facebook page and YouTube page. So we're trying to keep it firing on all of the channels, and we're happy with this. But there's a role that the viewers and listeners have to play, and that is to support what we're doing, to show your support. And we're asking you for that right now. Go to kfai.org, make a pledge, or call us here. The number, Miguel, is
612-375-9030.
There we go. Thank you so much. Well, let's keep moving. I want to bring in Indrid Alexander. Indrid, good to see you. How are you? You have to unmute.
There we go. Sorry about that.
Good to see you. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you for inviting me.
Well, it was good to see you at the event for Vice President Kamala Harris Saturday, and you were there with a group of your colleagues and friends, illustrious members of the Alpha Kappa Alpha sorority. I'm sure in support of your fellow soror, Kamala Harris, the Vice President, right?
Absolutely.
And talk about that event first of all, but also introduce yourself as a candidate for City Council in Brooklyn Center.
So Indrid Alexander, and I am running for Brooklyn Park City Council in the East District.
Thank
That's okay. In the East District. So I am really looking forward to seeing folks come out and get involved this election season. Over the weekend, the event with Vice President Kamala Harris was, I felt like it was such a blessing just to be in that room and having the opportunity to see her up close and in person, and just really speaking to issues that are, important to me and important to, my fellow sorors and other women in the community. So it was nice to see her here to address that issue and to make sure that, we understand that our current elected officials are here to support and to make sure that the reproductive rights of, residents of Minnesota are being protected right now, and that they're doing all that they can. But it's really up to us during this election season to get out and make sure that we're giving them our support and also putting people in office that will continue to support these issues.
Talk about Brooklyn Park. Why and how did you come to the decision to run for City Council? What are the issues there that you're addressing in particular?
Yeah, so Brooklyn Park is the second most diverse city here in Minnesota. I've lived in Brooklyn Park for 27 years. And, over those 27 years, I've witnessed that we really don't have the participation in our local government to address the issues that many of the residents are facing. Oftentimes when people think of Brooklyn Park, they view it as a divided community. We are a community of many different immigrant populations. And, just working on the small business task force, which I've been working on for the past I think it's been over a year now, participating in kind of the whole selection process and, bringing to reality the vision of what the Brooklyn Park Small Business Center can be to serve our community, especially minority business owners. I really saw that, our voice isn't always being heard. And oftentimes when we do have a voice, many of our voices are often pitted against each other. And so one of the things that I look to do is to really bring proactive leadership to our community. I feel like the leadership that we have in place right now isn't very proactive. We have several issues in place, such as Huntington Place, which has grown from a local issue now to, national news. And so I feel like we really need more proactive leadership to address some of our issues. We need leaders that are promoting and embracing the diversity of our community instead of viewing it as a negative, and using that diversity to unite our community.
For the radio audience, we had up a graphic of her campaign issues. Put that back up because I want you to kind of walk us through what you're presenting to the community. The document, again, for those on the radio, is titled My Top Issues. Let me read the headlines and have you talk to them. I want to make sure that you say exactly what you want to say to the listeners and viewers today. But your key big headlines are that you want to improve public safety by supporting and seeking solutions that decrease crime in a fair and balanced manner, and that improve the safety of our streets and highways. I want you to talk about that. What do you mean by that? Your second big headline says you want to rebuild and strengthen the working and middle class. Great sound bites. What does it mean? So I'll have you jump into that, Indrid. And then the third headline that I think you want to really jump in as well is embracing and engaging the cultural and intergenerational diversity of our community. And you've talked about all three of these already, but I want to give you more time to go back and sit in each item a little bit longer and make sure that you're saying exactly what you want the voters to know and supporters to know about your vision and your intent. So go back and talk about public safety. What are the challenges? What do people think about in Brooklyn Park when they think about public safety?
Yeah, so thank you for giving me this opportunity. Yeah, so as far as public safety, I think there are two real big issues that are impacting or that really impact the perception of Brooklyn Park. One is the increase of violent crime. It seems like oftentimes many of the stories that make the news are violent crime that's occurring in Brooklyn Park. And so I just want to make sure that, we are holding people accountable in our community. We want to support our law enforcement. And at the same time, we want to make sure that our children are being treated fairly and that they are given the same due process as all children. Oftentimes, as I had mentioned before, people feel like Brooklyn Park is a divided community where folks that live above 85th Avenue are treated differently from those who live below. And so I just want to make sure that we are, as leaders in the community, that we are not only holding folks accountable who are committing these crimes and letting them know that this is not the community or the environment that is going to tolerate it, but also understand that the law enforcement that is in place to address these issues are doing it in a fair and equitable manner, and that all of our children are being treated fairly. So that's the one part of public safety. But on the whole kind of different spectrum is just the safety of our streets and highways. Brooklyn Park has a highway that runs through Highway 252 that has several intersections that are ranked nationally as high accident-prone intersections. As a matter of fact, one of the intersections I've had my accident myself. And so, so it's definitely an issue that I would like to see addressed and addressed immediately. But what I am perceiving is what's happening is those issues are being used to push through other initiatives that aren't necessarily in the best interest of our community. And so as Senator Smith had just talked about rebuilding or rethinking Highway 94, at the same token, they're looking at using our safety issues on Highway 252 to use that as an opportunity to expand it. And, what has been put on the table is to turn this into a major 6-lane highway with min-pass lanes that aren't necessarily for the benefit of the community that it's going through. It would cause increased pollution, increased noise pollution. It would cause more traffic on the neighborhood streets. And so, I just want to make sure that these decisions are being made with keeping the residents who are going to be mostly impacted by these decisions, and that we have the opportunity to have our voice heard. Up until this point, it really has been the city of Brooklyn Center who has kind of halted and has taken the time to bring attention to the negative impacts that can happen in Brooklyn Park and Brooklyn Center. And I feel like the residents of Brooklyn Park really have not been well informed or have had that opportunity to give input. So those are, kind of the two major issues as far as public safety that I want to make sure that as a leader of the community that, it's being addressed.
I'm Al McFarlane. This is The Conversation with Al McFarlane, talking with Indrid Alexander, candidate for City Council for Brooklyn Park in the north of the city of Minneapolis. Indrid, the other two items you want to talk about?
Yeah. Let's see. What was the other one? The other one is
middle class and business, I think, was one.
Yeah, rebuilding and strengthening our middle class and our working class. I think there is an opportunity to put more focus on strengthening our middle class. As I mentioned before, I served on and I continue to serve on the Small Business Task Force, which really is targeted to providing resources to small business owners, especially minority small business owners in the community, and giving them the resources to grow a business from a micro business to a sustainable business where they can get out on their own. And so we put a lot of time and effort in really looking at what are some of those resources that are needed. Professionally, I'm an insurance professional and I work with small business owners every day. And so I get many clients that are looking to start new businesses, and I can hear and understand the struggles that they're going through of trying to, have those resources available. So I really want to make sure that we're, as a city, we're doing all that we can to, strengthen our community by building up those small businesses and from there. So yeah, and then also making sure that projects that we approve are, allowing for minority business owners, women-owned businesses to participate. I think that has not been a priority for the city. And, those are just some of the things that I look to bring to the city council.
Indrid, good luck. How do people connect with you? Is there a phone number, a website that you want to give people to find more about you and your campaign?
Yes, thank you. So the information that you were posting, that's actually available on my website at indridalexander.com. We also, our campaign number is 612-486-4002. And I'm always happy to address, specific issues. So I invite people and encourage them to email me at info@indridalexander.com.
Indrid, thank you so much, and good luck in your campaign.
Thank you. I appreciate the time.
Hopefully have you back as a city council elect in a few days here.
I hope so.
Okay.
Thank you.
Take
Bye.
care. I'm Al McFarlane. This is The Conversation. And as I said in our last break, we're wanting you, dear listener and viewer, to support this work. Just go to kfai.org and you can follow the directions for how you can pledge your support for this work, or give the station a call. We've got volunteers standing by. The number that you can call is 612-375-9030. It's on the scroll here if you're watching on one of the digital platforms. But, your support helps shows like this one, like The Conversation, stay on the air. And your support helps the station do the phenomenal work that we do in building and keeping growing community. So support us. We have a goal of $1,000 in pledges during this hour. We've got about 25 minutes to go. Make the phone call right now, 375-9030. Tell somebody that likes the show, likes the station, that this is a chance to show their support. I'm going to go to my last guest today. And Brenda, I don't think you've met Scottie Carter yet, but I want to introduce you. Scottie Carter is a phenomenal young leader. I'm going to call him a young elder because he walks in the way of elders. He's a leader at Greater Twin Cities United Way. And I know him because I serve on that board, serve as the vice chair of the Greater Twin Cities United Way. And I've watched him come on board and sort of establish his space, his vision, both internally and externally for the organization. I think we got a video too of Scottie introducing himself. Let's do the video first, and then we'll bring Scottie in.
My name is Scottie Carter, and I'm the Vice President of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion here at the Greater Twin Cities United Way. In the Twin Cities, we've been through a lot in the last 18 to 24 months, dealing with COVID to the social unrest. And this was the prime time to really sit here and make a difference. When this opportunity presented itself, I had to take it because I wanted to challenge myself and our communities to do and be better. One of the principles I live by is nothing grows without the ground being disturbed. In order to have a plant that grows so tall, the ground has to be fertile. But even before you get the seed into the ground, got to be uncomfortable. It's about challenging yourself to always be growing and doing the necessary steps. How can we expand upon that? How can we grow that to be more inclusive and think about it in terms of community? In the Twin Cities, specifically here with Greater Twin Cities United Way, we say we're going to be disruptors. That's what we call ourselves. We are change makers. My vision is for us to, in our equity and our inclusion work, to push forward and be bold and be daring. It's time to move forward. It's time to fail fast and fail often. We need to be able to see each other for who we are. The idea that I don't see color is wrong. The idea that we don't see the differences is wrong. We need to acknowledge our differences, acknowledge our uniqueness so that we can work together.
What a nice introduction, Scottie Carter. Good to see you. And for those who are listening on radio, you couldn't see it, but your imagination gives you the picture of a video that accompanied that rich and confident voice, the statements of power, spoken with power and conviction. Scottie, good to see you, my friend.
It's good to see you, and great to meet you virtually, Brenda. It's exciting. It's a great time to be alive.
Let me do Scottie Carter 101. You've given me your personal background, but let me share with my audience. Talk about you, your career, where you were born, and how you developed yourself through education and the career path you've chosen that brought you to Minnesota and to the position that you're occupying now as a vice president at Greater Twin Cities United Way.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Scottie Carter, I'm originally from Chicago, Illinois. That's where I was born and bred. So, Midwest, young at heart. I did, in terms of diversity, equity, and inclusion, honestly, I've been passionate about that space since I was like 13. Like, I was doing a lot of community service work, kind of like wanted to bring organizations together, people together. Like, the best way to put it is, we don't need to be bland. We need to have some spice of life. And oftentimes, like I said, I'm from Chicago. So, being a segregated city that Chicago tends to be, in order to connect, in order to get some different flavor, so to speak, you kind of had to think outside the box. And so I've been thinking about that and been working towards that. And so I went to Hampton University down in Southern Virginia, which is a historically Black university. And then I continued my track, and I went to Howard University School of Law, which is in DC. And my family, we moved out here in 2019 to Minnesota, and got a real awakening in terms of what it's like to be Black in Minnesota. And so had that experience, unfortunately, with had the winter, then had COVID, and then George Floyd. And my diversity, equity, inclusion work has always been the way I could describe it is I was always Batman in a sense, right? Because during the daytime, working my corporate job, in the corporate field, I am a lawyer, but I wasn't practicing. But I was still doing all the corporate things. But, when it came to diversity, equity, inclusion, I was doing it on my off time. I was doing it, and everyone would say to me, the work you're doing matters so much. Like, what is it that's keeping you from actually being Batman full time?
Mhm.
And so, this opportunity came across my desk, or I should say in that way, and I had to take it. And I've done a lot of stuff behind the scenes, so to speak, when it comes to diversity and inclusion. But that's what brought me here.
Mhm. Your family, talk about your family growing up in Chicago. Talk about your parents. What prepared you to be the Scottie Carter that you are today?
It's a great question. I should shout out my mom. Hi, Mom. If she's watching. So my mother played an integral part in terms of me being the man that I am today. Specifically, really showing me that we need to be a community. Communities everywhere. It doesn't matter where you live. You make community as you grow. This idea that love is so important, and honestly, just being connected is the far greatest. Being connected is the greatest. Human trait that we have is connectivity, and when we see differences, we also can see connectivities, and that's something that my mom's really integral and part of here. And I have to give her thanks, because I know it's her. Also my support of my family. Just kind of growing me to be myself. I think that's another part of this too, whereas you get to be yourself. So for example, Al, you see how I look on this screen. I got my hair, I got my beard. These are trademarks. I'm so proud to show up. But I grew up in a space where it was like, hey, you had to look a certain way. You had to present yourself a certain way to be taken seriously. And my family structure, my support system encourages me to be myself, unapologetically.
That's awesome. Family wise, what's the genealogy of your family? How about your grands? How far back do you know of your family tree? And I asked you, Scottie, just to get a sense of, I think that we're never alone, that we are operating in the spirit and with the blessings and the guidance, whether we see it or not, of our ancestors. And so I honor the ancestors by acknowledging them when and where I can. And I ask this question pretty much of everybody all the time. Generationally speaking, what are all the things that you feel pour into the creation, the making of Scottie Carter?
It's a great question. You make me think, which I love to do, right? That's how you get to be here. So genealogy speaking, I know my mom's side, she was able to trace it all the way back to slavery times, to my great grandmother Gracie, and I think I want to say it was in Missouri. I'm not 100% sure. With my dad is from Arkansas, and my grandmother was from Arkansas. And so my dad's family traveled up here in the early 70s to be here.
Mhm.
And so I also subscribe to the idea of ancestrally being poured into and shown up as one of the phrases I talk about often, or I share with people, is I believe that I'm my greatest. My ancestors' wildest dreams, because frankly, we're on this platform in 2022 to be able to share as a Black man, which is so important. Even here, thinking about, we're talking about voter registration. We're talking about voter engagement. We just had two previous guests were just talking about like what they want to show up at the polls, and we have a vote. We have a voice to say, "Hey, that resonates," or it doesn't. And so I think about like my ancestors are like screaming, like, "Scottie, that's great! Oh, like that's amazing! Like you are literally doing the things that we only could dream of." And I carry that with me. It's one of my inspirations.
Brenda, jump in here. And Scottie, just so you know, Brenda and I think Tina Smith made reference to it. Brenda and I were in kindergarten together in Kansas City at 5 years old.
Everyone laughs.
we both 75 now, so it's been a long look right at the world, and the importance of that for me, outside of just having my friend work with me both for writing and for this program, is that it gives us a certain perspective, a viewpoint, a lens through which we can examine our successes and our failures, the challenges we've overcome and those that remain. But it mostly demonstrates and reflects this sense of both resilience and hope that propel us into a future that we believe that we are co-creators and co-authors of. We have a duty, an obligation, a responsibility, and an opportunity to shape and create the kind of world that we believe is doable and possible. And we see that unfolding in the lives of the Scottie Carters of the world, young men and women that are principled, that are fearless, that are clear, and that are unapologetic. And so in that spirit, I want to again thank you for all that you're doing as a professional, as a leader at Greater Twin Cities United Way, but ask you also to keep talking about, what this means in terms of our people being clear on our need to show up at the polls. Why is voter registration and voting so critical in your words and in your experience?
Yeah, first of all, thank you for sharing the background, and it means a lot to me to be able to say that I am on the shoulders of you, Al, of you, Brenda, and thank you for trailblazing for a space such as this, so then we could talk about this. So I think that's so important, and I believe in giving flowers while you're still around in this plane. So I wanted to make sure I did that. I've been racking my brain about how to show up at the polls and what's important, and I think we need to be more mindful of like what times that we live in, right? Like with social media and with your phone, I mean literally on your phone it's like a personal computer. You can find information with a snap, right? And so it's amazing in the same vein how much disinformation or misinformation is out there when it comes to voting, right? I overheard a young lady, we're doing a voter registration at this church I was part of, and I heard this young lady, she's 18, and she said, "Oh, I don't want them to find out me, or I don't want them to call me because like if I vote, then they're gonna like fine me if I owe some money." And I just stopped. I said, "That's not how that works." And I'm sure she's like, she saw it on TikTok or somewhere, and I was like, wow, like we can be so misinformed, but we have so much, so ease of access to technology and to to find out the real answers. But once again, we live in a space in which if I'm trying to find something quick, I find it quick. And so the importance of voting is to just know the history, the heritage, but also the history's there, the heritage is there, the connectivity is there. But like I've been thinking about this in a different context in terms of, okay, we often do things that we don't quote unquote want to do. It's part of how we show up, right? I think about, someone says, "Oh, it takes too long to register to vote." I say it takes you 10 minutes. I can name 1,000 things I've done for 10 minutes that was not did not have the capabilities of being such a momentous momentous thing. Or, this idea, even with voter registration, right? Like the idea that if you were just registered to vote, how it would activate these candidates that come and talk, who are looking for your vote, to talk to you, to have conversations with you. And it's like, man, like if you only knew the investment of time would have been opened up for not just you, but the people you're connected to. And that's one of these I try to stress, which is, we could talk about voter suppression, which is real, redlining. We could talk about like historically with the test you have to take to even be eligible to vote, right? Like all of these are real. But like in today's society, you spend 10 minutes doing nothing often. I mean, literally.
Let's spend 10 minutes doing something once, right? Yeah.
And it's like, wow. And then like it's you have conversations with a lot of the people who are running for elections, or these constituents. They will tell you, numbers show, if we have this demographic that's all registered to vote, we have to stop by them. We have to hear their conversations, right? We're not even talking about voting yet. We're just talking about being registered to vote, right? It's a deterrent of some sort, right? So, think about it like, man, if somebody knew that they couldn't mess with you because you had the backing of this group, it would show up pretty powerfully. And so that's kind of trying to figure out, how do we show up in a way that makes more sense, that's more authentic. Because I can hear this, and this is one of my favorite people, but we talk about all the time the generational gap, right? When I go vote, the times I've voted since I was 18, there's no issue. I went in, I voted, and left right back up, right? I've heard stories of people, right? I've been connected. I've been on the front lines to be there for people. But like in terms of my experience, I am not as connected to those stories. So I have appreciation for history, but that's a personal thing. But like, if I could see the actual practicality of like, man, you know what? I want my garbage to be taken out on Tuesdays instead of Fridays. Like, or I want my garbage to be taken out twice a week. Like, simple things like that. It's like, oh wow, voting actually can show up.
Yeah. Scottie, I tell people from time to time that right behind me on the mantle here is a photograph of me when I was like 4 or 5 years old. I'm sitting on the floor with cousins, and on the divan behind us was my mom and her mom and her mom's mom, Lizzie Harrison. Lizzie Harrison, when that picture was taken, probably in 1954 or 51, somewhere in 51 or 52 maybe. She was almost 90 plus years old. She died at 100. But it hit me later that this woman that I knew, that I spoke to, who held me and who I held hands with and corrected me when I was visiting her in Mississippi, was a woman that was born as the property of other human beings. And so I say that to say that, I have a lived experience with a direct, tactile, touching relationship with a person whose life started off in bondage in this country, whose existence was at the will and mercy or whatever of other human beings. And so that's one of the reasons, Scottie, that I take voting so seriously, because I know through my own touch and stories and experience of how things could be. And I tell you, things could go back. It's never, I think the fight we have to fight, and the battleground is the voting booth right now. Is that critical? We've got to stay there. Brenda, what do you think? Brenda, jump in here.
I was just, nice meeting you, Scottie. I'm sorry. I was just sitting up here thinking about United Way. And I remember when we were in grade school and we made a big effort of our little dimes for polio and all of the things where even as grade school kids, we knew about giving back
Mhm.
And we saw our parents being community activists and setting themselves as a role model and giving us expectations. We've lost that. And we've got to get it back. I just wrote an article, and part of it was on Kenya McKnight, I hope I pronounced that correctly. But she made a statement in the interview that Al did with her, and it was, no one can do everything, but we can do so much together. And I think that's the effort that we have to make, not only on 38th and Chicago. And Scottie, I don't live in Minneapolis. I'm in the mountains of Santa Fe, New Mexico. So, but it's interesting because I look at this young lady. She calls herself a generational Xers. But all that she has accomplished in 8 years, and it all began with the community and hearing all of the talk and gibbish about all of the problems. And Al says that all of the time. When do we become solutions and not a discussion of problems where whites are making money on our problems? And you know, Cheryl Lynn LaChapelle was a member of the Healing Circle and Dr. Bravada's African American Child Wellness Institute. And she always said, don't complain if you don't get out there and vote. Mm-hmm. Don't tell me what you don't have because you didn't put the effort forward. And I kind of saw the worry in Tina Smith's voice, even though she didn't feel that good. But then there was hope that people have listened to the hearings and they know all of the corruption that's happened already. You know, they're loading up trucks now with guns, with people heading to the midterms.
Let me, we're down to the last couple of minutes here, Brenda.
I'm sorry.
No, fine. Thank you. As always, everything is on point. On point as always.
I didn't even look at the time. I apologize.
Scottie.
But anyway.
Yeah, Scottie. So in our last few minutes again, I just want you to reflect on this whole importance of voting and getting registered. What do you think?
Yeah, so I think it's going to take a collaborative effort. I think talking about United Way in particular, like, you know, nonprofits are, and there's research, that's data that shows that, you know, nonprofits are more trusted by the public because they understand that we're just trying to meet the needs of the community, right? We need to make sure that, that we are a resource and we are available to help our communities to just get out and vote, right? Like, we don't have to even be partisan. It's not a matter of like selecting candidates. Here are issues, right? And the more that you are registered to vote and active to vote, then we have much more of a way to show up. As one of my colleagues always says, you know, we're a political organization, not a partisan one. We participate in the politics, but we are not partisan. We want to help the community. And so that's our big push. You can look at our website and see some of the resources that we have available. And we're honestly trying to show up as like, hey, nonprofits, it's important to show up and get people to vote.
And there's also absentee voting.
Absolutely. Right. And there are issues and concerns. Like I said, you can look it up. These smartphones, you got internet access, you can look up a lot of the stuff.
We're out of time, unfortunately. Scottie, so good to see you here on this. I want you to come back. I think I just enjoy hanging out with you and enjoy and celebrate the work you do at Greater Twin Cities United Way. So thank you so much. I'm Al McFarlane. This is The Conversation. I'm going to hand it back to the station. Brenda, thank you, and we'll see you next time.